Since Sandy Hook, so long ago that Barack Obama was the president, there have been 239 school shootings. Not mass shootings, school shootings. 438 people have been shot in those school shootings, and 138 of them never went back to school. They were killed by crazed gunmen in the United States since Barack Obama's first term as President of the United States. The U.S., meanwhile, is building imaginary walls along the Mexican border. It's indicting Russians by the score, according to the breaking news, charged with the heinous crime of interfering in American elections, something the Americans have done on literally hundreds of occasions since the Second World War. The United States even invades people, overthrows their governments, murders their presidents. But still, the FBI has conceded that it did not obey its own protocols in relation to the mass murder in Florida this week. That's because they were busy tracking people's emails at the top of the political tree. Dysfunctional? Them? Well, I'm not one of those who has ever believed that the United States was my leader. Not the leader of anybody, never mind a so-called free world, let alone the United States, my father. And so I say in all sincerity and with the deepest condolences and sympathies to the entire people of the United States, and in particular those bereaved and their families maimed and ravaged by the latest bouts of insanity. It's time to stay home and clean up your own house. I was chatting to Eamon Holmes during the handover at 6:30. I made the point that he and I are both watching the fantastic series Jamestown. The United States is stained with the original sin of its entry into the family of nations. A country built on the genocidal mass murder of millions upon millions of the original Americans, compounded with the enslavement in chains and manacles, with whips and lashes and crucifixions of millions of black African slaves. Pretty hard to recover from that, you know. Pretty hard to build a functional society when that dysfunctional beginning was where you started. We'll be talking to Newsweek about the catastrophe in Florida, and as I speak to you right now, believe this or not, though I doubt many of you will be genuinely surprised, there may be another school shooting taking place right now as we speak in Des Moines, in Washington State. The campus has been locked down. Shots are being fired and heard by the terrified, affected people. We have no further details, but we will. And if it turns out that it is another school shooting, it will be the 240th since Sandy Hook. There have been 18 school shootings this year, and it's only February the 16th. Go figure. We'll be talking too about Corbyn. I have frankly not known whether to laugh or cry at the latest red scare, red baiting, witch hunting slander of the leader of the Labour Party. Not just because I'm against that kind of McCarthyism in politics, guilt by association in any case. Objectively, I'm against it. But because I have known Jeremy Corbyn for almost 40 years and sat beside him, usually literally sat beside him in the House of Commons for almost 30 years. And as I've said here before, and I'm repeating it again, there is no one on the British left that I know in Parliament with less affection, less of a connection to the countries of the former Eastern Bloc than Jeremy Corbyn. I know that because I did have such an affection. I did have such connections. Tony Gilbert and Kay Beecham of the organisation Liberation, who are accused of having brought a Czechoslovakian spy into the House of Commons to meet Jeremy Corbyn, used to meet me just a year later every other day in the House of Commons. Let me quickly add that I don't believe I met any Czechoslovakian diplomats, let alone spies. I've never knowingly met a spy in my whole life, but I'm pretty sure I've met a lot of British ones unwittingly. And the reason that I say that is nobody could have been less connected, affiliated with the regime in Czechoslovakia than Jeremy Corbyn. People like me regarded Jeremy Corbyn as entirely unsound on the issues of the Soviet Union and its bloc back in those days. Jeremy Corbyn was to the left of me then, probably as now, and he had no connection whatsoever to the Communist Party or the communist world. And so when I read that Corbyn passed information to a Czechoslovakian spy, as I say, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. It turns out Mr. Sandbrook of the Daily Mail, the former Hitler-supporting Daily Mail, that what Mr. Corbyn passed to this Czech diplomat was a copy of the Sunday People. Is that still coming out? The Sunday People was what Corbyn passed, imagine heavy inverted commas here, to this Czechoslovakian diplomat in the House of Commons. The diplomat could probably, may possibly, quite probably, had bought it himself the day before at any good newsagent. Now, the idea that Corbyn was a supporter of the KGB and worthy of the kind of treatment he got on the front page of The Sun, now taken up by the Daily Mail as a full-blown witch hunt, has been denied even now by the right-wing Czech government, which holds the records of the former communist spy agency of the now defunct Czechoslovakia. It is not true, they said. None of these allegations are true. So why are they still running in the media? Why did the BBC retweet the Daily Mail? Why did the BBC, reviewing the papers, give this any more credibility than they would have a scandal on the front of the Daily Sport? I'll tell you why. Because they can see the opinion polls just like you. They can see that Labour and the Conservatives are neck and neck. They can see that the government is collapsing in front of our eyes and that a general election may just take place unexpectedly any time. And they are determined, by hook and especially by crook, to stop Corbyn becoming Prime Minister of Britain. Now, if they are trying so hard to stop him. You might ask yourself whether that's not a good reason to hope that Corbyn makes it. I certainly do. Now, we're starting off because this is an auspicious occasion. Yesterday was the 15th anniversary of the greatest march in the entire history of these islands, which I had the great honour to be one of the leaders of. It was the 15th of February 2003, and millions of people assembled in London, in Glasgow, and tens of millions more around the world on the world's biggest day of demonstrations to try and stop the rush to the madness of the invasion and subsequent occupation of Iraq. And it's got me thinking about all kinds of things, not least how fast the time goes by. 15 years ago, there was I with my comrades at the front of that march, and now all of us, those who are still alive, are 15 years older. But much more importantly, I got to thinking of the 1 million dead Iraqis. 1 million. Imagine a mountain of 1 million dead. It would stretch as far as the eye could see up into the sky. 1 million dead Iraqis. Iraq broken into pieces, and a failed state which could then be taken over by the spawn of Al-Qaeda, known as ISIS. Now, it doesn't get much more serious, does it? Millions of us knew what our rulers, our Prime Minister, our Chancellor of the Exchequer, our cabinet ministers didn't know. We knew that this invasion was based on a tower of lies and that no good could come of it. We knew, and Jeremy Corbyn in his speech on the day 15 years ago said exactly so, that this invasion of Iraq would spawn generations of conflict and blood. And so it came to pass. What happened to the people on either side of the argument? What happened to those who voted to take Britain over that cliff with George W. Bush, the imbecilic American president of the day? Well, they're all doing fine, actually. Tony Blair has become a 100 millionaire. He's in the 100 club. He's worth £100 million. And whenever he wants to, he can summon the cameras and the microphones anywhere he likes in the world. Jack Straw came a cropper, courtesy of a bogus Chinese takeaway in a dispatches program. But the rest of them are all doing fine. The people who wrote the dossiers that lied us into war are all now earning 10, 50 times what they were earning then. Alistair Campbell, the blood-soaked propagandist, is never off the media either. They're all doing fine. Even George Bush is home in his presidential library, colouring in his books. The Iraqis were destroyed. ISIS was begotten. Conflict and hatred has deepened immeasurably in the world. Me, I'm still expelled from the Labour Party, of which Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair remain proud members. Now, I'm going to be talking, right after this break, to the woman who more than any other, there were many of us involved in the Stop the War Coalition leadership, but the woman I'm going to be talking to was primus inter pares, Lindsay German. If she does nothing else with the rest of her life, will have achieved greatness by the efforts that she led to try and stop the war.